Hello, everybody, and at long last, welcome to another episode of the Nen Show Podcast. This is Craftsdwarf, your host, here with my co-host, Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
I'm tired. I'm so tired.
Yeah, you've had there's been a bit of a delay, as is evident, I believe, in just the upload schedule. The episode came out later than expected, and some other things are getting pushed back due to reasons that I don't feel any need to go into whatsoever. That's not the episode's here now. Calm down. We're good. We're good. Just we're finally here. We're doing the Reborn discussion. We do have an arc listing thanks to some friends of the podcast who have including one who basically so I guess to give a little background, I don't know what the fuck happened, because this is technically the fourth patron poll we've done. But this one was absolute fucking chaos, because apparently people were like, Toriko, yeah, I'll let Toriko win. But then this time, like, oh, Toriko's gone? Bloodbath. Like, there was fucking, like, bribery. There was, like, like, votes. And, like, I know it, just, like, bartering for votes. There was, one person, literally, apparently paid real-life friends of his to give their credit card, basically use their credit card or whatever to patron the Nen Show and vote, where it's like they didn't lose any money because they were paid to do it. So that, like, it was fucking manic and insane. Like, I just pop in onto a certain server and see people arguing about the voting for the Nen Show, and I'm like, I just watched it. It was very silly and fun.
How is this the audience we've cultivated?
What's happened? I don't know. Like, it was some Death Note shit of just the mind battles and just code chaos, just insanity. So yeah, that was a thing that happened. And now we're reading Hitman Reborn, so it is what it is.
Bloodbath, mafia, something, hitman.
So yeah, this is a series that I believe neither of us have had any personal history with, right? Because I've never read or watched it. I vaguely knew. No, I barely knew anything about it. I just knew it had to do with mafia stuff, and I know the artist Amano Akira did the character designs for Psycho-Pass, which is, so it's really weird looking at, like, especially some of the later art, because I still see Psycho-Pass, because that was a pretty notable show when it aired, and I watched it weekly for half a year, and it's a pretty distinct, like, art style, so it stuck out to me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's, like, the only connection I have to Hitman Reborn. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of the only, I guess I sort of have some, I don't even know if, basically, like, I had heard, the way, that didn't come out right. The way that I had heard of this manga was when I made my Insecure Shounen Protagonist video years back, and, people were saying, like, oh, you should read Hitman Reborn. That's a good example of what you're talking about here. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'll get to it one of these days. And now, like, 4 years later or something, here we are. And I'm like, I get it. I see why people might have recommended it for that, even just on this first reading where it's not really an action series yet. But I can imagine.
Yeah, and I do remember that at least for a time period, you had it as your potential pick for, like, when we did the 2000s block. And, well, now we're reading it, so you can pick something else. But it was a series you were interested. You've been interested in it in some degree for years, and it's finally happening. We're finally here and reading it. Yay! But yeah, I guess to give some of my general thoughts is that, like, because I was not super into the reading, mostly because I just didn't find it funny, which is, it's trying to be a gag manga, basically. But, and we kind of talked about this a little bit privately, but, like, at one area that I was able to at least, like, be a bit more interested in is because knowing it becomes a more serious battle series, like, it was interesting, like, seeing the different elements of it, of the gag comedy that I could see potentially, like, being reworked for the battle parts, and, like, seeing how the series might evolve, basically, because we have read, like, Yu Yu Hakusho and, like, Kinnikuman as series where it's like they start off as something not a battle series and then become a battle series. But, like, I think Yu Yu Hakusho, like, it still keeps some of the mechanics, like the ghost power being, spirit power being, you know, emotionally powered is something mentioned very early on, and it's very consistent throughout the manga. And where Kinnikuman, it kind of abandons the Ultraman kaiju stuff for the wrestling. But you know, so I don't know. It's just and it's just interesting to see a different example, especially because, like, now I think about it, all of those three are separated by like pretty lengthy periods of time. You know, so like I don't know. It's just neat. Did you have any general thoughts or feelings from the reading before we get into it?
You know, I think I guess my experience with this first reading is sort of like, I feel like in the first, I don't know, whatever the first section of reading I did, like 30 or 40 chapters, you know, it kind of had like you said, could kind of see how some of this stuff or some of the characters or whatever could be worked into like a battle series. And so like there were certain things where it's like, even if most of the gags weren't landing, I still felt like I could still see some of like the core of like the emotions or the, you know, what the series could potentially be trying to be. And then it was just sort of the back half of the reading where that goodwill of like, I just wanted to see, it's like getting in it in the beginning, it's like, okay, I'm figuring out the premise and whatnot. And then by the back half of the reading, it's like, I know that this is going to become an action series. I'm tired of the gags. Just let it become an action series.
Make it
please.
stop. Make it stop. Make it stop.
And like the initial goodwill of like, you know, figuring out the premise and the characters and stuff. It's like, okay, I'm ready. Where is it? Where is it?
Yeah, and I guess to bring up some other things I'm aware about, because like there was some discussion on your server, I believe it, where it's like, because I get, well, like one thing I just thought about is that, because I think there's maybe this thought that like, oh, a series that starts out as a non-battle and then becomes a battle, it's like, oh, it kind of failed at being that non-battle thing, which maybe is true to a degree, but also I did realize, because like, you know, Hitman Reborn was running in a very competitive era of Shonen Jump, right? Where it's like, it literally ran alongside the big three and Hunter x Hunter and Gintama, and like you know, it's competing against Gintama as a comedy series, right? Like Jump doesn't need like 5 of them, right? So and it survived over a year still just being a gag comedy, so it was at least some level of like successful or popular from the beginning, basically, because especially like, you know, and thinking of like series, because I think the series started in 2004, so it would have been out for a few years. But, you know, I also just reread Bakuman and Toriko, which were from the similar time period, but a little bit later. You know, so those are just in my mind of like, you know, Jump had some fucking really good series coming out of this period, and this manga, you know, survived in that same period, which, you know, I think is pretty noteworthy. And then apparently it also during 1 year actually outsold Bleach, basically at its best. Yeah, so it was pretty, you know, that was of course when it was more in the battle stuff, but it's, you know, it's still popular. It has a cult fan base that survived, and you know, it's it's a series of note. So it's cool that we're getting into it, but you know, we still haven't gotten into the neat stuff yet. But I still think there's some fair foundation here.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, yeah, getting into the first chapter, you have Suna, and he, you know, no self-confidence, you know. Well, gee, you know, I wonder why people mention him in that video of yours, because it's very evident right off the bat. And that's very much a big point of contention. Because, like, he's immediately shouldered with this, like, as we come to see, this very famous and well-known and respected mafia family. Like, just the name gets him sort of like note and attention, but, you know, he hasn't done anything to earn it. Like, he's just given it, and he has to work towards like it. I get, or what's the word I'm looking for? Fuck, I had it in my head and it's gone. But you know, and of course, like, that's what Reborn is there to do, to teach him. That's the fucking name of the manga. What am I saying? And yeah, then there's the whole thing with the bullets and the dying will that gets used a lot of different ways, I guess. Yeah, it sure is a premise, actually. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be easier for me to talk about what I found interesting once we get to like the chapters where the observations like clicked in my head.
Mm-hmm. Though, yeah, I guess one thing I will say from the start is that, like, because it didn't happen at first, and it still has not happened, but I really do not like Reborn himself at all. Like,
yeah, no.
I just don't find anything appealing about him as a character or a mentor or like design wise, like because he's a mascot character thing, and I just kind of don't like him at all. Like and it's, which is really unfortunate when the namesake and mascot character of your manga, who's like really important for Suna, like I just like because he's just really obnoxious and shitty, and you know, and he's not, I don't find him funny. And I don't even like his design, so it's like, no, go away. And that's not a good reaction to have. So,
like, I don't know. I think maybe something I could appreciate, not as like, the way that he would always kind of show up in like, he'd always be in some different random spot, like in a painting or in a weird costume or whatever. Like, I could imagine how, you know, some people might find that funny or amusing because it's just like, oh, what's he gonna do this week? You know, kind of like in terms of it being like a gag manga, kind of like a recurring joke that kind of just seems to build on itself over time. But yeah, I just, you know, he seems very like detached and like he's trying to do what's best for Suna, I guess. But like, I just, I don't like his vibe.
Yeah. It might be more accurate to say maybe it's part of it is like it's less that he's doing what's best for Suna, he's doing what's best for the family, like, you know, because if he doesn't actually care about Suna himself, he just has to whip him into shape basically, and because Suna doesn't want to do any of this, he is not down for the, and like even throughout the series is like, you know, he very much like even as he gets stronger, he still doesn't want this. You know, it's still like something he's being forced to do. It seems like, and maybe when it clicks and he actually like cares, it'll be cool and satisfying. But you know, obviously we're still in the gag comedy part, and the part of it is like, you know, that's part of the humor is just he doesn't want any of this, and life just keeps happening so much at him, and it's a lot, and he just doesn't want to deal with it. So anyway, then we get Gokudera, who's the sort of the first major character introduced, sort of a angry boy, edgy boy a little bit. And then, you know, Suna wins him over, and there's a sort of, I guess, familial thing where it's like, you know, the winner the loser becomes the subordinate of the winner, which is, you know, helpful for gaining influence. But yeah, it's a thing. I'm trying really hard.
Oh, I had more that I wanted to say, but I'm like not even on the right chapter. I didn't realize.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Just yeah, I'm just moving along. I don't know what I'm doing. It's been a while. I'm out of sync.
Yeah, because I don't know if I had anything particularly interesting to say about the first chapter.
I was already on chapter 3. Sorry. Oh
my god, when does Gokudera show up?
Chapter 3 or 4 or something. Yeah, 3.
I think I did like the second chapter. How I mean, I guess there was sort of like a progressing thing over the kind of gag chapters where like initially, you know, like he's not very capable, and then like once he gets shot with the dying will bullet, then he's like, oh, I can kind of rely on this, and then it's like, well,
yes.
No, that's not really the point of it. And I did kind of like how by the you know, in sort of the back end of the reading, like there were plenty of chapters where it felt like Suna was doing things of his own accord, and like the dying will bullet didn't really factor in, and it was usually only like once he had already shown that growth or like that willingness to put himself out there, that then if he didn't have the strength or whatever, then he would be aided by the dying will, is kind of like, you know, that shonen thing of like willpower manifesting in actual power, and that was kind of neat.
Yeah, and having to display like the will to try first, you know, instead of being handed the power up, basically. Yeah. Well, because I guess that's also kind of fits with the act, because it's dying will, and if he doesn't have the will to do it in the first place, then, you know, the bullet wouldn't even work, right? So, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off there.
I think one thing I had also kind of felt, and like I'm going back to the first few chapters now, and I feel like they don't look as bad visually as I remembered them, but I definitely feel like the art gets, you know, a lot stronger. so, like, somewhere over the course of this reading, I feel like, maybe in particular, I think, like, once Gokudera showed up, because initially when it's just, like, you know, seeing the original few characters, and I was just sort of like, oh, okay, these designs look kind of plain, but then, like, Gokudera shows up and it's like, oh, he's like a delinquent boy, and I'm like, that's a fucking manga protagonist right there. That's like and that was something I found interesting, I think, about the premise of this initially, and I don't know how much that carries through, but, like, it felt to me like, as these new characters kept getting introduced, and, like, most of them are just way cooler than Suna and feel like they could kind of be they could have their own sort of interesting story, and they would be like a more standard kind of, you know, protagonist where it's like, oh, there's something cool to get behind here, or, like, you know, Gokudera being like a delinquent, or you get like Kyoko's older brother later, the boxer, who is just
for sure
very much like fighting spirit type guy.
He's literally a Joe reference, right? Like, literally a reference to one of the, like, most important shonen protagonists ever, right? So it's like, you know, that kind of works with Suna. Like, if he's surrounded with all these characters who feel more like main characters than he does, then that sort of, like, you know, furthers his insecurity, right? So, and even from a sort of, like, meta level in that way, maybe, I think is what you're getting at, right? And
I think, like, as well as that, there was a particular chapter, I think it was the one where Yamamoto is introduced, where it really kind of felt like that chapter to me was where it kind of clicked of, like, oh, this is something potentially interesting that the series could do with this. That, like, you know, maybe I should have waited till we got there, but just, like, you know, Suna being surrounded by all these other cool characters, but there's sort of this conflict with him and Yamamoto, where it's like, you know, Yamamoto's up on the roof and he's, like, talking about, like, killing himself because, like, I forget, he had, like, an injury and he couldn't do baseball or something because he, like, worked too hard. And then, you know, he was like, oh, well, you know, I forget exactly how Suna said it. Like, you know, I don't know what you're thinking because I don't try, you know, I haven't put in the effort. I don't have the expectations placed on me that you have. But then that's sort of like getting through to Yamamoto, and it sort of presents this interesting, like, I don't know, I'm jumping ahead. It's hard to talk about this manga because it's all gag chapters and a lot of them are one-off, and I don't know.
I'm fine with a more, like, you know, non-linear discussion, especially since it but, like, no, yeah, that's a good, because, like, Suna knows, you know, the struggle of, like, you know, Yamamoto was knocked down low, basically, and he was struggling to deal with that when Suna's always been low, so he's able to, you know, offer his perspective and, you know, push him forward, you know, help him in that way, right? So, yeah, no, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
But yeah, I think, like, of the characters introduced in this reading, I think Gokudera is probably my favorite. I feel like he has the most striking design to me, and also just, you know, he's dumb, but, like, he's
dumb edgy boy,
dumb edgy boy, and he tries really hard. And I guess as well, like, just in terms of Suna kind of being surrounded by all these other characters who feel like they could be shonen manga protagonists. I think as well, with this being like a kind of mafia manga, it makes sense that if it's like, you know, a person's strength is quantified by their ability to have really strong subordinates type thing, and, like, surrounding themselves with really talented people. So, yeah, there's definitely, like, interesting ideas present here, and I think some of the gag chapters, and, like, I feel like a number of the character introductions work for me. There are some characters where I felt better about them at the end of the reading than I did in their introduction. But, like, yeah, there's definitely interesting ideas here that I'd be curious to see carried over into a battle series, because just, like, you know, as I didn't feel like as a gag manga it was fully realizing, I guess, what I would find interesting about this setup.
Yeah, and I think, because I'm trying, maybe I'm just completely off base, but, like, because especially what you get with gag manga is they're trying to, like, make everything into a joke, which, especially when it comes to like, you know, Suna's hang up, if it gets to the point where the manga is shitting on him for it, then it's like harder to come to like a reasonable resolution, if that makes sense, if it has to make everything a punchline, I guess. So in that case, like, and that's not something that all gag manga do, right? Like, you know, Gintama had serious stuff, and it could even, you know, it would know when not to make the joke, if that makes sense, right? Or to refer to a modern Jump manga, Roboco, Me and Roboco, it will also just have endings to chapters that are just like wholesome and, you know, perfectly fine, and not turn everything into a joke, even if, you know, so, you know, yeah. But I guess that's the thing, is I'm trying to think back, and I'm trying, like, maybe it's the other problem is it's been a little while since I actually did the reading, because like I did the reading on time, and then it had to be delayed for a number of reasons, so I'm a little like disconnected from the chapters in a sense. So maybe there's more like genuine stuff, but I literally just don't remember that, at least not with Suna. I think there was something with Gokudera, but like later on there was a good chapter with him, but with Suna himself, I just don't remember him getting any sort of like genuine resolution, like, because there was this early chapter that I'm sort of moving to with the Russian roulette one, where Kyoko, just a panel of her, it's like with the gun against her forehead, and she's just kind of like, I don't know, she's got like a smile. It's just like, what is going on? And it's just a weird, especially out of context, it just looks like it's a silly panel. Then she gets the dying will, and she goes after Suna's mom for being, you know, kind of shitty towards, like, you know, saying, oh, my worthless son, and what not. Suna doesn't actually get any sort of like resolution or catharsis. Like, he just misunderstands and doesn't like thought, oh, she, you know, like he doesn't get an angle to view himself or view someone else viewing him positively, if that makes sense. Yeah. Right? Because obviously, you know, his negative down on himself attitude is part of his character, and the series can't do away with that this early. But you know, I don't remember him getting any like much positive advancement on that at all. So like the series just kind of keeps shitting on him for 60 chapters, you know. So I'm kind of curious as to seeing how that is going to go, you know, going forward, because there's still a lot to go.
Often part of the joke is that the characters, it feels like the other characters have some sort of misunderstanding of the situation, or like they all just have an IQ of 2, like they just somehow are able to view each situation in the most charitable light to Suna, and he's just like, what, how are you seeing this? And so it's just like, I guess there is something potentially interesting in everybody else seeing the good in a character who can't see any of that himself. I mean, like, that's pretty interesting. But yeah, just like you said, as a gag manga, it feels like a lot of the jokes are more about maintaining the status quo. And I think maybe another part of what kind of bothers me about this framing as a comedy manga is that, like, so often it feels like basically every character who has been introduced has to be involved in a chapter, and it's just like, it's too much for me personally.
That's it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that either, because I definitely think, like, especially a thing where just because sometimes manga just get really dense. Like we had that with One Piece, where every chapter was just a lot. You know, and I think, well, because I also had that reading Toriko recently, because what happened is the manga was basically told to end. So like in the last like part of the story, they're meant to get 8 ingredients. They get 2 in 2 full arcs, and the last 6 they get in the last like 2 arcs basically. And so the chapters are very like packed and dense. And I was at a point where I just kind of wanted to keep going and finish and read something else. With One Piece, I'll stop and like actually engage with it because it's One Piece, right? So, but in this case where it's a gag manga and a lot of the time is spent on these jokes, like I'm gonna be kind of, especially, and they're just more gags, and the chapters just get denser and denser in that way. And I'm just like,
yeah, what ended up happening with me was kind of like a Kinnikuman situation where, like, I ended up picking up Chainsaw Man because I was like talking to a friend trying to get them to read Ayakashi Triangle, and they're like, all right, but if you read Chainsaw Man, and I'm like, sure. And it's just like, you know, I would spend like an hour reading a handful of Hitman Reborn chapters and then just rattle off a few Chainsaw Man, and then it's like, go back, but it's just like the chapters were so dense with and especially when a lot of the dialogue is just, you know, Suna being the straight man and having to comment on a lot of things, and it's like that. I get that that's a style of comedy, but when it's like, you know, when we're trying to do a podcast like this, I'm just like, I want to just skip that dialogue because it's like I get what you're gonna say. Yeah, so it's like, you know, there. Yeah, I guess maybe if I just had to give like a general thing, it's like I do enjoy aspects of this manga, even in the gag portion. It's just, you know, in this initial stretch, a lot of that is bogged down in things that just don't click with me. But I wouldn't say that this is like, you know, I'm still interested in where this manga is gonna go, and I'm still like, I wouldn't say I you know, I'm not making a judgment on how it's going to be going forward. It's just like, yeah, it's interesting. And I think sometimes it's kind of infuriating how like there's interesting things in here. And it's obviously like, we know that it's going to become a battle manga. But just in the comedy, it's like, just slamming my head into a brick wall, waiting to get to the good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, because I was even just thinking about, like, because, you know, Roboco again, and also Dr. Slump, where both of these are gag manga that, like, for a good while, it took a while for me to get into them, even as gag, like, and those are two series that have stayed gag manga, they haven't changed. Like, yeah. I did not like Roboco at first, but, like, I've continued to warm up to it, and now it's at the point where I legitimately like it. And Dr. Slump, I thought it was fine early on, then there was, like, a point where I was just not into it at all, and then there was another point where I'm like, okay, this is fine, I like this, and, you know, so maybe it's just something with me and gag manga where it just takes time to get into it, and in this case, you know, by the time I would get into it, it's also just literally moving on and not being a gag manga anymore, so it's like, okay, but I haven't gotten to that point yet, so, in either case, I guess, but yeah, I will say I'm already appreciating certain things more just from talking about it, because, like, you know, I read the manga and I haven't thought about it a lot in like a few weeks now, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that was there too, or yeah, you had a point that I hadn't thought about. It's cool.
Yeah, this definitely feels like one of those manga where, like, at least in this first stretch, where, like, talking about it, it's easier to just pick out the good stuff, and it's like, well, also, I know I was trying to talk about the Yamamoto chapter earlier, but I wasn't quite there yet and forgot what I was trying to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But, like, one thing I really thought was interesting about that chapter, and where, like, reading, I think it was chapter 5, and that was where I kind of felt like, oh, you know, like, if this was the core of the series, or if this what it's trying to go for or something, this is an interesting potential takeaway that, like, you know, when, Yamamoto is, like, trying to, like, train for baseball, and he asks for advice from Suna, and he's just sort of like, oh, put in more effort, you know? But he's, like, lying, and so then when, you know, Yamamoto is about to jump off the roof, and, you know, what is it? Yeah, that, like, Yamamoto is, you know, like, because he, like, breaks his arm, and he's, like, he doesn't, something about the idea of, like, failing everyone by, like, not living up to those expectations. And then Suna has to kind of, like, the way he talks him down is just by saying that, like, you know, I've never put effort into something like you do. And, like, I've never had the feelings of, like, being so frustrated of, like, wanting to die, and that he would have regrets dying. That, like, just the fact that, like, you know, he's able to kind of get through to Yamamoto because it's like, unlike me, you have these abilities and, like, you have this willpower. And so, like, you know, just because you don't meet up to expectations or just because you fail at something, you know, you shouldn't want to kill yourself over that because, like, you're better than me type thing. Like, you actually can put in the effort for something like that. And, I thought that was kind of like, that was an interesting line of thought, I think.
No, yeah, I'll definitely try to pay attention to that, just sort of because, because I could totally see the series doing something where, like, Suna sees, you know, because him seeing the good in all these people around them, even, yeah, Yamamoto at his lowest, but not seeing the good in himself, where I could easily see them doing an emotional moment where the people around him mention that they see the good that they see in Suna, right? And like use it to like pick him up after like a low point. I could see that being like a super good moment. And yeah, so just that's one of those things where it's like the manga has like, even if we're not super into it, it's building an anticipation just from the things we know about it from the outside, right? And I can even see, like, if you were reading it not knowing anything about it, like watching that, like with Hunter x Hunter, you watching it the first time, the 2011 anime, it going from this light adventures series, and then it gets fucking into Chimera Ant, and it's like, or even York New, it's like, oh fuck, that's what I'm in for, right? Like, just watching the evolution of something can be interesting in itself, right? And so watching this gag series become a more serious battle manga out of nowhere might be really cool. Would have been really cool to some people, I'm sure. But we knew about that beforehand. And I was also going to mention, because you talked about like the way characters would sort of like see the best in things, or I just was reminded of the running joke with Yamamoto where he just kind of like frames all the weird shit as going on as like, oh, they're just playing around, or and just like he doesn't even see reality. And I'm kind of wondering like what's going to happen if he ever does, and how that will resolve. But anyway,
and especially just like the concept of the dying will bullet as like a power up, because I think it even comes up at one point that like, if you don't have any regrets when you die, then you just die. And so the fact that like Suna lives this kind of life full of like regret, and like he doesn't really try, and and then he's like surrounded by these characters who do put in the effort, and who like are talented or like powerful or whatever. Like I could definitely see it being maybe a kind of series where it's like part of the dying will bullet is like to get over those regrets or those failings, and like strengthen yourself so that you don't need it, which could potentially be interesting.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. Sorry, I don't have anything more to add there. But anyway, I guess moving on a bit, we get another character introduction. Everybody's favorite, Lambo.
I think another point I could say is just that like when the series is focusing on like, I guess I'll just say like the human characters, like Tsuna and Yamamoto and Gokudera. And like, those people, it's like, okay, even some of these gags kind of work for me. But when it's like, the kids, like, all of Reborn's people, I'm just sort of like...
Basically, like, because, there's this sort of like, there's the school world and there's the mafia world. And, the series is very much about like the sort of friction between those two. I definitely kind of agree where it's like the school world, has these cool dudes. And then the mafia world has all these weird fuckers. And when the focus is on these weird fuckers and the jokes that aren't really that good, it's, and Lambo is very much like, he's annoying and shitty and terrible. And I guess that's the joke, but also he's annoying and shitty and terrible. And, unfortunate.
And it's the joke, but also it's meant to be endearing in a way, maybe, or guess, some people would appreciate that. I don't, because it's like the other characters who as they get more familiar with these characters, they're just sort of like, oh, the type of like, they're just getting up to the shenanigans because they're kids, and like, I don't know. Also, the whole like 10-year bazooka never really, and it's just like I don't find it particularly funny. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's handsome now, but he's still just as stupid as shitty. And it's like, okay, sure.
Unless maybe, like, if I'm really reaching, maybe there could be something about, like, just because you put, like, a new coat of paint on something doesn't mean that it's, like, any better. Like, it doesn't really hide the... I don't know. I feel like I'm really reaching here. But maybe there's something...
It's one of those things that could be transformed in the future, right? Like, actually, to give an example, from your favorite, Kinnikuman, is I saw a panel from, like, later on in the series, because I think, like, in the actual manga, like, Canada Man was, like, a huge jobber, basically, just got his ass beat, and I saw a panel where it seemed like he was getting a more serious fight, and they were using that element in a more serious way, which seemed kind of cool. So if we can get, maybe we'll get something like that with Lambo, where, you know, these, that might, you know, make us care more. I don't know. I hope. Please. Give me a reason. Well, we've already talked more about the series than I thought we would. Not really. Well, okay, not that much, but like, I don't know, especially about like, we traditionally talk about like the earlier stuff way more. I have noticed, like, like I think one of our longest first episode was Yu Yu Hakusho, where we talked about just literally everything before the Dark Tournament for 3.5 hours. It's like, it was insane, you know, which in fairness, that is quite a bit. Like there's like 3 or 4 arcs there, but damn. But yeah, when it gets to kind of, because I'm like skimming through the chapters and it's just kind of like individual gag stuff. And yeah, until like, because there's like a chapter before Bianchi gets introduced that's just like, you know, here's the characters and they're doing their gags, and it's like, yeah, I don't think I have anything I want to say about this chapter because it's just, you know, it is the manga. Did I even have any notes on chapter 8? Nope, it was just the thing about him not thinking things are real that I already mentioned. But yeah, Bianchi is another one of those characters. What did you think about her, actually? Because she just kind of has her poison jokes and...
I guess when, you know, she's definitely part of the mafia world and not one of the human characters that I find interesting.
Mafia people aren't human, Mathwiz 2023. So I don't know why I thought that, but just the way you phrased it, I guess. But, you know, yeah, that's kind of just the poison, and I guess she's Gokudere's older sister, and she keeps showing up. Why? I don't... I know why. I mean, I don't know. It's something about, like, because I was even thinking about it, because it's like, you know, the anime girl cooking where it's bad. It's like, it's really hard to do those jokes and have them land for me because they're so common. And it's like, it's to the point where it's like subverting it is also common, right? Like, oh, the food looks bad, but actually it tastes good. Like, that's become just as common as it looks bad and it is bad, right? Like, it's to the point where there's so many layers to the joke that it's kind of really hard to do it in a way that, like, I care for at all. And so this is like, okay, it looks bad, but it is actually bad because it's supposed to be poisonous, I guess. Sure. But it's still, I don't find it funny. I don't find it funny. Like, and don't get me wrong, there are some jokes I like. Like, I was actually looking for my notes and I remembered one from, like, the tail end of the reading that was just so stupid. I was giggling for, like, a fucking minute over it, and I wrote it down and I remembered it again, and I was, like, quietly giggling while you were talking. So, you know, I'll bring that one up. But so there's stuff I do find funny, but, you know, it's, unfortunately few and far between, so.
Oh boy, speaking of characters who Haru, I really did not like her introduction at all, and she got better by the end, but the whole premise of her being, like, attracted to Reborn, and it's just, not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was, like, because she, you know, kids are cute or whatever, but I'm not into it. But then, yeah, I did like her more by the end, like you said, but,
and yeah, because it's a mix of that, and then also she just kept beating up Suna because she's like, oh, you must be, you know, a bad influence on him, and it's like, it's not funny. It's never going to be funny.
Oh yeah, another one of those chapters that I was just kind of like, ugh, there's the one with the math. They're like learning math, and like Reborn was helping badly, and like everyone was coming in and not helping at all, and it just kind of kept going and resolved in a whatever. I don't like Reborn as a character. I don't care. It's just so weird.
Like, I feel like sometimes it feels like with Reborn, you know, I get the idea of, like, I'm not gonna give you the answer because you're not gonna learn anything unless you figure it out yourself. But sometimes it really feels like Reborn goes in the opposite direction, where it's like, I'm not gonna give you the answer because that won't help you grow. Instead, I am going to make it worse for you, or I'm gonna make it tougher for you to get out of this situation.
Yeah, I think that's what bothered me about it, is that he's not actually helpful, which I get that's the joke, but like, you know, he's literally ruining Suna's life and just making it hard for him, and he's just I literally, maybe I just hate Reborn. No, I don't think I hate him, but I get that it's supposed to be funny, but it's not funny. It's just annoying, and I don't like him. I don't like Reborn. God. So anyway, then we get the fucking Kyoko's older brother. What's his name? He has a name. Kyoi or Ryohei. That's right. And like, he was fine, I guess, because he kind of like I brought up earlier, he folds in. He's a Joe reference, so he kind of factors into like character who feels like a main character but isn't. And like they also kind of have a neat contrast with him and how he works with the dying will bullet, because like he's already living his life with no regrets, basically, so it just doesn't have an effect on him, which I thought was kind of a neat contrast. And as a character who's referencing Joe, like they do the white hot ash line that wasn't translated ideally because the translators didn't recognize it, but also just like I feel like Joe himself, if you shot him with the dying will bullet, it would be he'd just be the exact same, right? Like, so it works. It's kind of cute. So yeah, he's another character who's fine because he's from the school side of things rather than the mafia side of things, I guess. So
yeah, and like you said, I did think it was cool that like or maybe that's also how they could spin the whole dying will bullet, because if it's like just as far as if it ideally you wouldn't need it because you're already kind of like trying to live with no regrets type thing. And so, like, that character, I guess, could embody that sort of, like, ideally, it wouldn't, you wouldn't need it because you'd already be sort of, mm-hmm. There are interesting characters here, and that's probably the most positive thing I could say at this point.
Yeah, and well, another thing on the topic of the bullet, because you were kind of getting at it, where it's like the character, Suna shouldn't rely on it, and here's a character who doesn't need it at all. But I guess one thing I was also thinking about was because there's a chapter with Shamal, the doctor, who yeah, there. I was waiting for it. I was fishing for it, just because here's another mafia character, and that's the reaction I'm gonna get. But I guess what I thought about this chapter is because I noticed that like they're adding mechanics to the bullets, right? Where it's like, oh, if you get shot with the bullet too much, you'll actually fucking die, and so they have to get the doctor to help Suna. And I was just thinking about how like it's good that they established like there are unknown things about the dying will bullets, because like I've seen later images of the manga, like I've seen Suna with the dying will like flame on his head, but also he's still wearing clothes, because like for a serious battle manga, I don't know if it's gonna work if Suna isn't like, imagine fucking like Luffy fighting Blackbeard at the end of the manga and Luffy's just in his underwear. Like, that's not gonna work, right? So I just realized like there's probably gonna be tweaks to certain mechanics here or there, and just I don't know, them bringing up that like there's more to it, basically. I guess is setting that up, like, if things get changed later, there's things that Suna doesn't know about it that the audience doesn't know. So
I think I can also imagine the whole, like, I think one thing that also didn't really work for me was the very specific, like, each chapter kind of having a different implementation of the dying will bullet, like, oh, if you shoot it here it does this, if you shoot it here it does this. It kind of feels more of like, for them being kind of like episodic gag chapters, like it kind of feels like there being so much variety. And I think the other thing I didn't like about Reborn is that like a lot of the premises or, using the dying will bullet and stuff, like he just has to explain a lot. And it's like, yes. I'm not interested.
No, it was definitely kind of awkward when you're having this like, dramatic or action sequence or whatever. Maybe not dramatic, it's still a gag series. But like, where Reborn would just shoot Suna and like, I shot him with this bullet in this area and it did this thing, and it just kind of like breaks up the pace of it in a way that's not, it's not funny for sure, which, I mean, that's kind of a problem with the manga in general, but like at this point, but it just like, it's just, though I guess, the way it's handled doesn't really like, it's telling the story with words, I guess, and I understand, like, someone reading the manga, because, like, every chapter is potentially someone's first chapter, so especially with a gag comedy like this, the hopes of having each chapter be its own thing, right? So you have to explain certain things like that multiple times, because you never, it's not Super Saiyan. Like once, like Super Saiyan, obviously, like once it's the thing, it's like they don't need Goku becomes yellow, and they don't need to explain why he becomes yellow because like the audience fucking knows, right? Because it's fucking Dragon Ball. But at this point, like there's too many mechanics to just like assume the audience knows all of them, right? Like if it was just a dying bullet, they could probably get away with just that one. But then there's all the other little like if you do it in your hair, it's a springy bullet, and so they have to explain that multiple times because they're weird and they aren't intuitive, right? So just like that kind of thing, right? So all right. So anyway, I guess I kind of forgot about Hibari, who's I guess more of an antagonistic character.
Yeah, and like the introductory chapter with Hibari is probably the most it feels like a battle manga moment, because it's just suddenly there's this guy who's like super tough and basically takes out all of them, and it's just kind of a fight chapter. I think like Hibari is definitely I'd be interested to see how he gets incorporated, because like by the end of the reading, it almost kind of seemed like he could be like a Vegeta type character, or the person who's like an ally but also kind of an enemy, but is on their side, but just is edgy and doesn't like them, but because like they fight off all those sort of like all those people, the guides, the surfer dudes. I don't know, he's neat.
No, yeah, for sure, because like he gets that like first arc. Or that for that battle chapter that felt kind of like big, right? And then he just kind of fucks off, and then he's I guess I felt like after that he was still more involved. Like he came back, but for gags in a way a lot of the time, which felt a little weird for a serious character, but I think it makes sense. Like there was the one with the girl. I don't know. I assume like all right, because my English speaking brain wants to pronounce her name Ipin. But then it's probably E-pin, actually, like going by Japanese pronunciation, but I don't actually know if that's the case. I'd have to look up the katakana. Like there was the joke where she thought, whenever she gets shy, she explodes, and she thought he was cute, so she exploded so he'd literally just come in so she could explode for a gag, basically. Right. So, I guess like the character himself is serious, but he'll still be involved in jokes, I guess, which is fine. But yeah, he felt stand out in that way. So, because, he's a little different than the rest of the cast. So, I'm just reading through another one of those gag, like, I'm just skipping ahead, honestly, because there's just gag chapters, and it's like, I don't have much to say about this one chapter, like, and they just keep introducing characters and bring them into the scene, for more jokes, and it's just like kind of goes to what you were saying earlier about how they just, like every character has to be like, maybe not every character, but still like, easily half a dozen characters have to be involved in like every chapter. So it's like, okay. I literally don't think I have anything to say until we get another character introduction. If you wanted to go through your notes or panels, if there was anything you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of like the character introductions and then maybe like a couple of chapters at the end. But okay. I feel like the most I had to say, I think, was on Yamamoto's introduction. I don't think anything else quite clicked with me in the same way, where I'm like, I think I might get it, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Because, I guess there's the birthday chapter, which is chaos, and then there's Ipin, she's just another one of those mafia characters who's, she exists. I thought it was weird that they did like, oh, she's actually a girl thing, where I don't know how I fucking just assumed and was like, yeah, I don't know why, but just something tipped me off. I don't even know. Nothing to say on Ipin, I assume.
Like I guess like of the characters, of the mafia characters, she might be one of the more like fine ones. I don't know. I didn't really hate her.
Well, at least when she gets hit with a 10-year bazooka, she's not like terrible. She's just a fucking normal person where it's like, fuck, I was delivering these noodles and well, that ain't happening anymore, so I guess I'm just here now. This is my life. Like, I don't know, that was fine, where she's just as a mafia character, because like Lambo, he's, like you said, just same shit, different coat of skin, where Ipin is actually just like become a normal fucking human being, and so that was fine. I think they did mention that like she has like a lot of potential for being like in the mafia world, but she, you know, I guess gets out of it at a certain point. See, I'm actually wondering how, because like the 10-year bazooka is one of those things where it's like, you know, as a gag manga, you obviously don't think about it too much, but in a serious manga, in a more, or from what I keep hearing, the distinction in like Bakuman or in interviews and stuff, the general distinction is there's gag manga and then there's story manga. So I guess to borrow that, you know, so with you know, Reborn becoming a story manga, my question is like, okay, how do the mechanics of the bazooka factor in? Because I assume like it's still going to get used in like, you know, there's also an arc called the Future arc, which, like, thinking about how that might tie into the bazooka, like, well, what if Suna got hit with the bazooka and we saw him go 10 years into the future, and like, you know, so which could be interesting, but you know, it also makes me think about just like, you know, how what's the series' stance is on like, you know, causality and fate, and that like, can the future be changed, I guess, and so I don't know. It was just a thought I had, and wondering how the series might explore that. Because like, if you know, because again, if it's going to become a battle manga, like with Ipin, is she going to get fights as just a fucking regular noodle lady, or is her future going to change? Basically, like that's what I'm kind of wondering how they might spin it. So I don't know. See, I feel like this episode might be maddening for people who have read the manga, because like the comments are gonna be like, because we have all these concerns and speculations, and it's like I just remembered back to the One Piece discussion where you know, like, oh, this imagery of Ace walking to his execution reminds me of Gold Roger, and I'm just like, don't make a fucking noise, Craftsdwarf. Don't make a single fucking noise. You know, because like it's hard, because you can't like, yeah, that's a good observation there, or interesting, I hadn't thought about it like that. Well, it's like whatever I say is like tipping you off, you know, and making you think of like whether are you going somewhere, are you not. It's really hard to juggle that, but like here we are, neither of us know anything
outside of just like outright lying to me, like, oh, that's an interesting observation, I've never thought of that.
Yeah, but even then, yeah, right, which is, that's like, oh, that's not actually a thing, and then literally 3 chapters later, the son of Gold Roger, and it's like, oh, right, so it's like, you know, the audience listening is probably just like, you know, they're thinking about it, and they're like, yeah, this is the thing, and or it's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and that's not gonna come up again, or it's like, you know, and they'd like it, they're getting the right direction, they might actually like it, they just need to read 70 more volumes. Okay, it's more like 36 or something like that, but anyway.
You know, there is one mafia related character, I guess, who, you know, I actually kind of like because he's not a dick, and it's the guy,
Dino?
the other. Yeah, Dino, the other mafia family.
See, as
leader.
You were saying that, I got to the page where he's introduced, and I'm like, oh yeah, this guy was fine, because you know, he's all about unity, and which also I was thinking about how, like, you know, having these different mafia families with their different like identities and you know, like basically they're setting up ideological conflicts, right?
Yeah.
You know, or you know, not what's the opposite of conflict? You know, because like there was another mafia head who I had some interesting takeaways for. But that character is also kind of a meme, but we'll get to him. But yeah, no, yeah, because Dino, he had his thing where, yeah, he's stronger with allies and he's weaker without, which would be used with gags and stuff. But yeah, he was fine. Just, yeah, like you said, he's not a dick. He's just a fucking reasonable human being, which is, you know, in short supply in this fucking manga, apparently.
But he is also kind of put in some positions where, like, you know, in that last chapter with Gokudera, where he's like, you know, kind of the messenger, and he's like, well, I would have had to try to kill him if, you know, if he came along or whatever. So it's like I could see him potentially being in a sort of like antagonistic role, but more likely than not, he's gonna just be like, you know, like as soon as group goes into a conflict and tries to do something, and they're at the point where it's like, oh, all hope is lost, and then this guy swoops in with his people, and like maybe they're an ally or something. I don't know.
Yeah, though it would also be interesting to see, like, if they butt heads, you know, it probably wouldn't be like a serious conflict, but I could see them, you know, scuffling
like a Luffy Usopp type fight.
Yeah, like exactly, like kind of like not something with like major consequences, but still like, you know, there's a disagreement and something needs to get resolved, and you know, the battle is the only way they can see to do it, you know. So if there aren't any character introductions, the manga's not even real. Like I'm just skimming through, just blazing through chapters, and I'm just like, yeah, these are chapters, all right.
Yeah, it's like Suna gets hospitalized.
They end up on the island.
They get lost in a forest on an island.
A forest, or I forget. I don't even remember. I don't care.
It's like a forest on an island. I don't know. They go to a festival.
Oh yeah, they mentioned there's like a ranking of mafia families, which, you know, gotta love the numbers. And it's like, oh, this family. Oh yeah, that's right. There's a kid who, like, he's a genius and he can practically, or yeah, like he can. What's fuck. Oh yeah, he's the kid who ranks everyone basically.
Oh, I didn't like that character.
Yeah,
it was one joke, and just it got old in the chapter it was introduced in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just hard to see how a supporting character like that could really have much utility when that's his one character trait, pretty much.
No, yeah, see, I was even well because it kind of becomes a power. Oh shit, no! I really hope the character because it's kind of like
Power
a power level system, right? Yeah, because if it says like this character is the 13th strongest and this character is the 80th strongest, well, it's like, well, fuck, you know, like it's basically it serves the role of a power level system. You know, so now, like, what's the fucking character from Hawk, the fucking pig from Seven Deadly Sins? Like, I don't know if you even got to the point, but after the like first 100 chapters. He gets the ability to read, or she, I don't even fucking remember, the ability to read power levels basically, and becomes like a talking scouter pretty much. And it's like, yeah, that's super, that's good. That's what we want out of our characters. They just talk about the power levels. Yeah. Suddenly, not looking for. Well, I don't know. That's what I you know, it could do that. It hopefully won't. We'll find out, I guess. Oh yeah, so I'm skimming through, so I might be skipping ahead for you, but there's the chapter where Yamamoto gets, like, his sword, basically, which, like, I just thought, I guess, because, you know, he can't do the baseball anymore, but there's still, like, what he did in the past, you know, he's, even though he can't do that anymore, like, what he got from that, he's still able to take into his new sort of, like, you know, profession that he doesn't actually understand in the mafia stuff, right? Like, he also gets the baseballs later, so like we're seeing what things he can get to use in a battle context that fit his like theme as being a baseball player. But so you know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a cool progression on that. I did think it was also kind of interesting how over the course of this reading, like by the end of it, it does feel like you do kind of get some examples of like the characters have gotten a little stronger than they were in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like, I think you also kind of get some stuff with Gokudera towards the end. And it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, he had, like I said, he had a good chapter later. And yeah, there's also a couple chapters where, like, because Nanmanji and Luno have also been reading the manga, but they're familiar with it, and they were commenting on some stuff that they didn't remember coming back up. Later, where it's like they knew about it later, but then rereading it, they're like, oh, I forgot this was mentioned this early. So I don't want to spoil the specific things, but I will try to keep them in mind and try to remember where I heard them from, because, you know, hopefully we'll be having those moments of like, oh shit, you know, we were talking about this and it became a thing just like we thought. So, yeah. Okay, so I'm up to Longchamp. If there was anything before then that you had to mention, Naito Longchamp.
Wait, hold on. Which chapter is that?
That was 45. So I was skipping ahead a lot. So I'm on 45. So if you want to back up or at any point, you know, let me know.
You know, I think the only other thing I would have to say is that there are some really good chapter covers with Gokudera. So if there's an aesthetic character of this manga, it might already be him.
Aesthetic character return. When was the last time you had an aesthetic character? Because it's been a hot minute. Because we went through fucking like Kinnikuman and Gintama, where it's like, well, I guess Gintama you had who did you have with Gintama? I don't even remember, because there was Kyubey, I guess.
I don't remember either.
Yeah, I don't think. And Kinnikuman, obviously, the series was anti-aesthetic. With Saint Seiya, the series was like all aesthetic. So
all
it's like
aesthetic.
So it's like, so I was even thinking, like, when was the last time we had a proper Mathwiz aesthetic character? And it's like,
did I say anything in the Boruto reading? I can't imagine.
No, I don't think. Well, because it was only like the 2 episodes, so I don't think you know, you have one from there quite yet. But I just need to make a list and just go back and like, okay, all of Mathwiz's aesthetic characters, just for my reference, because I can vaguely remember a bunch of them, but I just have to go back through and think about it again, because it's a classic Nen Show meme, I suppose. So
the people want to see the aesthetic character ranking list. Where's the tier list?
Go. No, I was even thinking about that. I mean, obviously we're not reading it, but because I was reading Toriko, and I was even wondering, like, which one would be Mathwiz's aesthetic character if she actually fucking, forced herself through the series, But obviously, I don't know. I just thought it's just a meme that I just keep thinking about. So, but yeah, I guess. So yeah,
when do we get to talk about my Ayakashi Triangle aesthetic character?
I want to talk about that manga now. Like, it's literally, I want to reread it because something clicked with me with that manga, and now it's like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm down. I'm into it. Last chapter was fucking funny. We talked about it already.
When do we get a Nen Show horny block?
Let's go. I actually really want to do that because
character development.
I also want to reread Sora no Toshimono, which I've talked about. It's from fucking no, I'm mixing up his name. I forgot his name because I'm mixing up with another author. The same guy who did Plunderer, and he's just fucking a crazy person. So yeah, but anyway, so yeah, we get Naito Longchamp, who, gasp, annoying mafia guy. Yeah. So what did you think about Longchamp before I go on? Because yeah, it's he's a guy.
I guess there's maybe like, I think there was something interesting about like the introductory chapter where there's like the sympathy bullet, and it's like, oh, he's so happy-go-lucky and dumb and stuff, but like in reality he's like he's kind of like projecting a lot of it, and it's like there's all this sadness hidden beneath, and I guess that can be kind of funny. The problem, is that he's annoying 90% of the time he's on screen, and so the appeal is very quickly lost.
Unfortunate. So what I actually realized, and it was funny how this clicked for me, but it's just like, well, because this was a character I knew about a while ago, because apparently of all the things in the daily life arc that come back, apparently Longchamp doesn't, for better or worse, probably better. Yeah, but what I think is funny about that, like, is because, like, he was one of the characters I had the most, like, takeaway from, in that, like, he's an anti-Suna, right? Like, he's, like, Suna's a sad boy who gets hit with the bullet and he does what he cares about the most. Longchamp is a happy boy who gets hit with the negative bullet and becomes a fucking depressed, like, sad sack. And especially the way they have in their relationships, where Suna is surrounded by people who he kind of doesn't want to be around. Like, he kind of doesn't like them, but they still care about, like, or not that he doesn't care about them, but like they're a pain in the fucking ass, right?
Yeah.
But he still cares about them, and they like him because they keep coming around, So he has all these long-lasting bonds that he kind of almost doesn't want. Where Longchamp has these short-lived bonds that he's kind of forcing on other people who just do not give a shit, right? And just like realizing that, he's overconfident where Suna has no confidence. Like, like Suna is kind of like, all of his allies are weird, and he's kind of, he's a straight man. He kind of points out the weirdness, where Longchamp, his allies are weird, and he kind of like, he's fine with that. Like, they're just complete opposites. And I was thinking, like, oh yeah, if this character actually came back, it'd probably be neat contrast-wise, because he is this, like, complete antithesis to Suna, but also apparently he doesn't. So it's like, well, oh well. So I'm having all these takeaways, and it's like, well, I guess they don't matter past this arc. So
yeah, I hadn't even thought of it that way, but yeah, when you put it like that, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. That is interesting.
Does it stop him from being annoying? Not really.
No.
But no. Yeah, I just love the curt way you said this. No. Like, that was funny. Oh yeah, and there I'm just looking through the chapters, and there's like the running jokes where he has Longchamp has unattractive girlfriends, and like,
yeah,
it's not, and yeah, forgot about those. I don't want to think about it. It's not good. Oh yeah, then there was a chapter where they sort of went to the Mafia Island, and all right, they have more fucking babies. Great, that's what we needed. But I guess I also noticed that, like,
also the fact that like with the baby characters, there is like a fucking like, oh, they have the colored pacifiers, and there's like a group of them, and I'm like, well, that's shonen as fuck.
The arcobaleno means rainbow, and the Mafia represents the 7 strongest infants, and it's like, bruh. Yeah, actually, now I think about it, like, even if it's like, oh, you know, I'm not super into the kid characters, the fact that it's like, it's so absurd, and yeah, it is shonen as fuck, right? Where it's like, you know, the seven warlords of the sea, the 4 emperors, you know, it's just like, you always got the 7 swordsmen in the mist, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's got the 7 strongest infants, and it's like, oh, okay. It's just silly. But yeah, I guess this was also a chapter where it's like, I noticed people having, respect for, you know, like, oh, everyone, let's follow Vongola the 10th, right? Where it's like, just Suna having, you know, his blood is what got him into this whole shit, and here he is getting respect, not for him, not for Suna at all, just for what he was, his lineage, basically. You know, so just another one of those things that sort of feeds his, you know, lack of self-confidence and worth, I suppose.
Yeah.
Of just, you know, but oh, goddamn, I thought we were almost done, but it's actually just, so for chapter 51, for some reason it says 61 on one of the pages, and I was like, oh no, that's the last chapter, we're almost done, we're done, and it's like, no, there's still 10 chapters left. What am I thinking? So never mind.
I did kind of like the chapter, I think, chapter 54, where it's sort of like, all the characters are trying to teach him how to swim, and I like it in the sense of like, oh, it's kind of like a little training arc for Suna. Like, all the characters are trying to like help him be better, and like, oh, here's something you're struggling with, let's work on improving that, and not just like, wow, this fuck up that you did is actually really cool because I can't see it, you know, I can only see it in the way that I perceive it, type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, like, you know, the gag at the end is that it doesn't amount to anything because it was being tested on a different type of swimming. But
right.
I do also, I think, like how that kind of pays off a little bit in the conflict with like the surfer, the lifeguard dudes, where like they're doing that contest or whatever, the competition, and then like Suna goes out to like save a drowning child. And like, it's like, yeah, that's like shonen protagonist things. It's like, even though, you know, he doesn't really like, he's not really one to try usually and go out of his way for things. Like, he actually did something there, and that felt like growth on his part. Even if no one recognizes that that's actually what he was doing, because like the dying will bullet comes in, and yeah,
which is kind of like even the way it ends on the gag is just like, yeah, Suna just can't get recognized because it's a gag manga, and the world has to keep shitting on him, and it's really unfortunate. But you know, again, we still have plenty of manga to go, so yeah, no, it just got to that chapter, with the surfers and the ocean, the beach episode. Oh, here's the chapter that had the joke that made me laugh. It was the 59, the Haru one, where she like is having a misunderstanding, and she's trying to test Suna on if she's a good person or not, and she's just doing really, really stupid stuff.
Yeah.
The one that made me laugh was with the dropped coin, where she expected him to return it, and it's like, I even wrote my number and address on the back, or something like that, where it's just like, it's so dumb that I just started like it just hit me, and I was just laughing. Like, it's just, she's not even real. She's a dummy.
Yeah, and also just like her perception of things, that it's like, you know, it's like 100 yen coin, which I imagine it's like, you know, if you just find a dollar bill on the street, like, oh, you're gonna take it to the police? No, you're just gonna pocket it. Like, exactly, who would reasonably think you would do that? And it's just, I do think that was funny. That like her idea of what it means to be a good person is like so far above like what is actually like reasonable. It's like, you're looking for a fucking saint here, and And yeah, I guess it's also kind of something where like, you know, she dresses up as the old lady and then like her fucking face melts and and then she dresses up in the weird costume
and the kids are like, wow, cool, and she's like, no, get out of it, no. Yeah. It's funny.
But yeah, the one with the coin I think was probably the best joke of the chapter.
Yeah. Anyway, then we get the last chapter of the reading with which is Goku Dare chapter, where, you know, he's gonna move away basically, and and he's trying to figure if he should or not, and you know, Suna's cool, and he's because Goku Dare actually, you know, respects him, and it's like, and he's gonna get some moments with that. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, this chapter was actually like good because it had kind of a wholesome like message to it, as opposed to Suna just being, you know, shit on. It's like, you know, like Reborn, actually they have like a conversation, and it's not like he's setting him up for something. It's just sort of like, I don't know, unless I'm misremembering how that conversation ends.
I mean, you know, there's still misunderstandings and stuff, but it's like, yeah, it actually just has like a genuine resolution, and, you know, like, wow, the manga can exist without characters getting completely shit on, basically. So,
and also just that, like, you know, Suna being surrounded by all these like crazy people, you know, he still considers Gokudera a friend, and so while he's like, yeah, no, I'm happy that he's gone because I feel more at peace, and like he's not going to cause trouble for me, but also at the same time, like, he's my friend, and like I don't want him to leave. And it's like, oh my god, a genuine emotional moment.
Exactly right. Like, it's just like, finally, it only took the entire reading, but it happened. You know, so it's like, fuck. But yeah, I mean, the fact that the manga can do that, and now that, like, you know, we're free, Mathwiz, we're free. We can just read more stuff that it's actually perfectly fine. Yeah. So that about does it. Yeah, I definitely appreciate it a little more, even though also I still feel the same way ultimately, where it's just like, just so much of it is just, you know. So it's like, but yeah, we're through that now. So hopefully we at least, you know, can walk away from the next 5 readings, you know, positively. Maybe even we'll like it a lot. Who knows? Because, you know, we'll find out, I guess. But yeah, I guess, did you have any final thoughts post discussion?
I don't know if any of my thoughts have really changed. Like, there were a couple of points you brought up that I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought of it like that. But yeah, I think I'm still generally at the point where it's sort of like, you know, I have hope that I will enjoy future readings more. You know, it's not like I'm completely disgusted with the premise and like, I can't do this. You know, I'm definitely, you know, I feel like even if I didn't end up liking it, I would still want to read it through to the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially like, and I guess the other thing is, you know, hopefully, like, if we walk away from the rest of the series, like, endeared to the characters, and this reading will become more palatable later, knowing that, like, hey, you know, Bianchi, you may be, like, a shit now with your fucking cooking, but maybe you'll actually have, like, genuine moments later that make me give a shit, and then I'll be more slightly invested in this earlier stuff, you know, even if I don't find it funny. So, it's like, whatever. Or fucking Reborn, especially, where it's like, fuck, man, God, I'm gonna pay attention to him, because I don't want my takeaway from the manga to be like, yeah, this manga's pretty good, except Reborn, I hate that little fucker. I don't want that to be the case. I might just, I don't know, yeah, but like, yeah, it's just, this is not working for me. It's not working for me. But yeah, anyway, so next time.
And I definitely, while we were going through, I made sure to save some of the chapter covers with Gokudera, because it's good art. It's really good art.
Yeah. So next time. Oh yeah, go on.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, like, as we were kind of going through it, I think maybe just the art didn't look as bad as I remember, or as I thought it did initially. I think maybe it's just like over time getting better with like shading and I don't know, the line, whatever goes into art, you know, it looks prettier now. And so like I could definitely imagine there being like some cool like battle scenes, because like, yeah, a lot of the character designs work for it, and there can be some striking shots. So Yeah, hoping things are good.
That said, the scan quality certainly doesn't help. Certainly doesn't
Yeah,
help because it is,
that's-
unfortunately.
Yeah, the scan quality was maybe more of what made me think it was worse than it actually was.
Yep. So anyway, next time we're reading chapters 62 to 135, which apparently covers the Kokyo and Varia arcs. So yeah, that will be cool, hopefully, and we will catch you next time. Oh, wait, never mind. It's fine. Everything's fine.
Did you? Right. You're right.
I was gonna bring up the book club, but it's not actually coming out until the day that the second episode would come out anyway. So I'll leave a note to talk about it at the end. We're reading Dr. Slump, and we're doing a stream discussion of it on the day that the second episode of Reborn comes out. So yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's not super important right now, but actually, if you want to read Dr. Slump before we talk about it, then I guess. But oh well, too bad. It's too late. You lose. Haha. All right. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.